was teaching myself bread baking at home and enjoying it, and did it in 2 restaurants in the 80s. And meanwhile, I was teaching myself marmalade making, because just as I'd become passionately interested in bread, so I had the same relationship. I thought there weren't good marmalades here, and so I very naively thought, well, I'll make marmalade. And that's how I started. I'm a real perfectionist for doing as little as I can to fruit. You don't need to mask it, you don't need to do an awful lot. You can play with it by giving it another fruit to relate to, or you can infuse it with herbs and flowers. And that's kind of playful and fun. But essentially, you know, the product should taste like the fruit itself. So when someone comes to my table and said, wow, this tastes just like a damson plum. Well, that's not a good example because they're rare, but you know, this tastes just like a Santa Rosa. Well, yes, you know, that's exactly what preserving should be. It should capture the essence, the beauty, the simplicity, the complexity of fruit. By looking at the color of preserves, you can tell something about how they're made. I mean, if you take, for example, the apricot. I mean, apricots are vibrant orange, so that's what the conserve should look like. So if you end up seeing something that's got a kind of brown, deep, dark color, it's dull, then something is telling you that maybe they've cooked it too long. I think a lot of people overcook their preserves. And I think that's a common thing that happens with people when they preserve at home. They cook too long. And so they get that jammy texture. It's got to be balanced. And balanced for me is not necessarily balanced for somebody else. Our taste buds are different. You know, learn your taste buds. What do you like? The more you build up your knowledge of the characteristics year in, year out, the easier it is to be able to translate that work into the next stage and onto the stove. What I do is home-style preserving in a commercial kitchen, and I take it to the commercial marketplace. I'm just looking for oranges that are free of blemish. They don't have a really rough exterior, because when you cook the fruit in the first stage, you have an unevenness in terms of the ripeness of your fruit. Some of the peel might cook faster than the other. I'm basically topping and tailing. I'm just taking the top and the bottom off the fruit, and we get rid of that. When we segment, we go down the middle. You'll see some drying out. That's caused from the freeze. The cell structure's changed inside. And marmalades are much more labor-intensive than conserves, because you're doing all this, you know, hand work with cutting. I just don't want a big chunk like that. We have this, the juice, lemon juice, and then we're going to add in my lemon membranes to make pectin. Just tie it up. This bag gets suspended in the pot. You're going to evaporate away some of the water you've added in and concentrate this mixture. We've cooked it down, we've measured it, and then we put in our proportion of sugar, and this is the mixture here. And I'll show you squeezing the pectin into here. And you know, the more you squeeze, the thicker it gets. Now we're doing what we call cooking off, the second stage of cooking. And you know, this will come to a boil. We'll set the timer for about 30 minutes, and we should get our set in 30 minutes. Now, if we don't get it in 40 minutes, you'll see a shift in the color. I'm just testing it because it felt like it was thick, but it's not ready. You see how flat it is on the plate? It's not got much of a shoulder, which would show that it's setting. So we need to cook it a little bit longer. I want to take it off now. I feel like it's thick enough. I'm kind of like judging it based on the way it feels. There's a feel. I sometimes will take the pot off and decide that it needs another minute or two, and I'll put it back on. And I won't really know until I've kind of picked up the measuring cup and poured it, and I look at how it pours. It's going to vacuum seal within maybe about half an hour. The product's really hot. We didn't waste any time once it came off the stove. So it's a hot pack. This one's got a little bit on the rim here. So the window for marmalades is very, very small. It can be a 5-minute window between having soup and having sugar that's caramelized. But this is just an aid to the gelling. So, you know, the more you squeeze, the thicker it gets. Yeah, this is just my lemons. That's what we put on the stove just now. Mm-hmm. So what we're getting, you know, all that natural pectin from those seeds and the membranes. It goes from the mixture here feeling, like it can feel watery, to when you've got this in, thickens it. It's actually not bitter. People think it's going to be bitter and it's not. I never measure this, and it's a question that's always asked, how much, and is there a problem with too much? But, you know, I don't think so. You know, it's just an aid in the process. Easy. It's easy. I hear the kind of classic, wow, it's hit them. They've tasted something. It doesn't taste like the stuff you get in the jars anymore, because you have to look for the fruit in those jars, in a lot of them now. You have to get past the, you know, the fructose and the corn syrup and the citric acid, and, you know, finally there's some fruit somewhere, but it's masked. When I was learning bread making, you know, as a novice, I wanted to know how many pounds and ounces and how long. And the person training me was often saying to me, I don't know. Look at the dough, touch the dough, smell the dough, taste the dough. But I wanted those certainties. Well, there's not certainties in food. Don't double the recipe with preserving. It's like one of the standard rules. And the reason is that you can't get the fruit to a temperature where you're going to get the consistency you want, be a set or a very thick sauce, before you caramelize the sugar. You lose the color, you lose the flavor. People are worried about, you know, all the things they've read in the books, and they're scared that they're going to harm people if they don't use one-to-one sugar. You can't just walk away and put the timer on and say, well, 30 minutes will do it and we'll come back and we'll jar it up. You have to observe what you see in the pots. It's all about controlling small amounts of food, small amounts of fruit in the pot, basically. We have a resurgence of artisans here, passionate people who want to do things in traditional methodologies. What we're up against is, you know, a level of food production that's got so far, so utterly removed. I haven't seen a way to scale this up without compromising, in my terms, compromising the quality of the work. The jars are all vacuum sealed, so they're indefinite. They could be on a shelf forever. And then once you open them, you have to behave appropriately with the fruit. I recommend people refrigerate them after they open, and they use clean utensils, because if there's only 15% sugar in there, which is sometimes what they are, then you're really looking at cooked fruit. You have to behave differently with my products than you do with things that have got so much sugar in them that they'll last forever. I mean, sugar is a lot cheaper than organic fruit, and you get much better yields. It's kind of that long-term education away from this notion that shelf life is one of the more important things in a product. I'm a Brit, so, you know, tea and toast and marmalade. Having said that, I encourage people to move away from bread. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but people, you know, they get kind of stuck in their thinking. A Meyer lemon and rosemary marmalade could be a wonderful glaze for fish. The silver lime and rosemary syrup is fabulous in vinaigrettes. Let's remember this is just preserved fruit, and there's nothing stopping us but our imaginations.